Welcome to today's episode of Over 50 and Flourishing. I'm your host, Dominique Sachse, and I am so thrilled to introduce you to our special guest today, Dr. Shieva Ghofrany. Dr. Ghofrany is not your average OBGYN. With more than 2 decades of experience in the field, she has dedicated her career to helping people conquer their health fears with a proactive mindset. From navigating her own journey through 6 miscarriages, 3 births, endometriosis, weight loss surgery, and ovarian cancer, Dr. Ghofrany has firsthand experiences with the challenge that many women face. Her mission? To guide women realistically in their quest for understanding their bodies and their minds. Today, we're doing a deep dive on healthcare versus sick care and how we can best advocate for our health. Without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Shieva Ghofrany. You guys know red light therapy is all the rage these days. There's a reason for it. And a leader in this space is BonCharge, a holistic wellness brand with a ton of evidence-based products to optimize your life in every way. But it's the red light face mask that's really getting a lot of press these days. What are you hearing about it? Well, first of all, it reduces wrinkles and fine lines. It can help with sore jaw, especially if you have TMJ, migraines, acne, scar tissue, wound healing. The list goes on. And let me tell you, BonCharge products are all HSA, FSA eligible, giving you tax-free savings of up to 40%. Just go to boncharge.com/over50. Use coupon code over50 to save 15%. That's boncharge.com/over50 and use coupon code over50 to save 15%. You all know I like to treat my body right, and the same holds true for my hair and my scalp. Let's face it, in midlife, our hair tends to thin, get finer, and we're all looking for solutions, and some of us would like to go chemical-free. Well, say no more to thinning hair with Vegamour. Vegamour will deliver visibly thicker, fuller, shinier, longer hair without all the harsh ingredients. Every bottle of Vegamour is 100% cruelty-free. They are never formulated with potentially harmful chemicals like parabens and hormones. Give your hair the power of the little pink bottle with Vegamour. For a limited time, Over 50 and Flourishing listeners get 20% off their first order by going to vegamour.com/over50 and use code over50 at checkout. That's vegamour.com/over50, code over50 to save 20% on your first order. vegamour.com/over50, code over50. Love having Jenny Kane as one of the sponsors in today's episode. One of my favorite classic contemporary clothing lines. Beautiful, timeless. I feel that my wardrobe is complete. It's a California brand through and through, a wonderful summer aesthetic. They're known for their gorgeous winter sweaters. I mean, pure cashmere and quality fabrics, but they also have cotton sweaters as well. Beautiful blouses. Their dresses are to die for. Find your new uniform at jennykane.com. Our listeners get 15% off your first order when you use code Dominique15 at checkout. That's 15% off your first order. JENNIKAYNE.com, promo code Dominique15. Let getting dressed be one less thing to worry about. Embrace your summer aesthetic with Jenny Kane. Dr. Shieva Ghofrany from the Connecticut area. So good to have you on Over 50 and Flourishing today. What a treat.
Dominique, thank you. I'm so excited. It's so fun to talk to someone in another time zone too.
Yes, that too. Well, we've had you on Morning on Merritt Street a couple of times just to talk about a variety of topics. Clearly, you know, midlife, you're an OB-GYN, you're in midlife, so you can relate, sister. There's no putting it mildly. You get it. But you really have an integrative approach to medicine. And what I want to talk about today is something that I saw you touch upon on your Instagram page. You did a reel about sick care versus healthcare. And I think that's so important because there seems to be a divide these days about how people are approaching medicine. And it's either one way, people see it as, well, they're just treating my ailments, or I'm going to find a practitioner who's going to help keep me whole and well. But there's this great divide, and I think you believe there doesn't have to be. Am I right?
You're right. And I love that you picked up on that. And I think the biggest reason I think that we need to talk about it more is actually completely unrelated entities. One is what you said already. it doesn't have to be separate. We don't have to have medical doctors who know nothing about integrative medicine or integrative practitioners who don't really follow any of what we would call evidence-based medicine practices, right? I think there is a way to
Mm-hmm.
collaborate. But in the current model, and this is the second part that I think is so important, in the current model, there is not enough time for physicians to actually spend time with their patients. I'm sure you know that. If you see doctors who take insurance, the most well-meaning doctor, and as I joke, even the chattiest, fastest talker like me, will still unfortunately only have 15 to 20 minutes per patient. So it really means that with everything we're expected to learn and everything we're expected to impart on the patient, it's virtually impossible to really then be in a position to educate, to really be in a position to listen to all of the different aspects of what the patient really needs. And so because of that, patients feel so understandably disenfranchised. They feel gaslit. They feel like no one is listening in the medical community. And so they seek alternative practitioners, many of whom are very well trained and mean well, but they don't take insurance often, as you know. They can spend more time with their patients, which is wonderful, but it furthers this divide because then it becomes a situation where the patient thinks, you see, that doctor didn't listen to me and that other alternative practitioner did, which is true, but it's also because of the system, because the model does not allow the doctor who takes insurance to spend time, whereas the practitioner who doesn't take insurance, who's often profiting quite heavily, which is completely within their right, and I don't blame them, but it becomes kind of a value-based situation where they seem like they care more for the patient. The reason I care so deeply about that paradigm is that it really furthers the rift between doctors and patients, right? So it makes the situation seem as if doctors are kind of contentiously dismissing their patients, which we really aren't meaning to, even if people do it. And it means that when those patients inevitably have to come back into the Western evidence-based medical system, whatever we want to call it, they feel anger and animosity. And they feel like they're coming into it kind of needing to advocate for themselves. And that's not a healthy situation for them either. So I think that what we really need to try to figure out is how can we create a situation where Western doctors can use some integrative practices and or we really have almost two separate systems that work together, meaning I want to be able to help you with whatever pathological issue you have because I'm a Western trained doctor who is trained in pathology, right? Meaning someone has a problem, I am trained to help fix it. Whereas a more Eastern integrative practitioner might have been trained at prevention instead of fixing something. So wouldn't it be interesting if we could have two prongs, but who work together, right? Because imagine that it's almost like, I don't know in the news world, but it's a very different type of person who would do certain newscasting in the field versus in the newsroom, right?
Right. A reporter versus an anchor.
Exactly. And if you ask that same person to fulfill all the roles, they can't do it adequately. And then someone is left feeling undervalued. And right now, the model, as I see it, is that the doctors feel undervalued because they're being blamed for a lot. The patients feel undervalued because they're not being listened to by the doctors who don't have enough time to spend with them, right? And so we could sit here and just say there's medical gaslighting, there's patriarchal medicine, all of which is true. But that's not ultimately going to help the patients or the doctors, right? So I think we can do better and we can value other parts of it.
How do you describe and define integrative medicine? What does that mean?
I mean, everyone has very different views of what it means. I would personally say the way I try to practice is really looking at the person holistically. And I don't mean that to mean in a natural holistic sense as much as looking at the woman as a whole entire person. Meaning, if she has breast cancer, I want to talk to her about her breast cancer, not only how it affects her physically, but how it affects her emotionally and sexually, her future, her family members. So holistically. So to me, as again, a Western trained physician who cares emotionally about people, I look at integrative medicine in that way. But if you talk to an acupuncturist or someone who's a Western medical trained doctor who's then done an integrative fellowship, they will aggressively incorporate herbs and supplements and acupuncture. If you are a pelvic floor physical therapist, you would integrate other aspects. So the beautiful part is integrative medicine can really explore multiple different options. But again, if we expect regular Western trained doctors to be the ones to kind of be in charge of all of it, then we're going to keep losing out. And that's where I wish there wasn't
Mm.
kind of this rift about what we should be doing. We should be allowing integrative medicine to come in, but we need teams to do it, right? The same
Yep.
woman who just had a breast cancer diagnosis and sees her oncologist, understandably feels angry that her oncologist hasn't addressed her sexuality. I get that. But I
Mm-hmm.
also feel like that oncologist has to stay on top of the latest protocols for chemotherapy. What are the different modalities that she might need for radiation for her genetics? So to also have that doctor have to understand sexuality, the emotional component, the physical component, how to treat it seems absurd, right? And yet that's what
Mm-hmm.
we expect. And then the women lose out because they don't get the treatment and the doctors get blamed. And so they end up being disenfranchised and wanting to stop. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think you get what I'm saying. I think that it's so important to do it, but we're not doing it well right now.
Yes. Well, it's clear the system is broken and it's not serving anybody. The doctor doesn't feel like he or she is serving the patient fully and well. The
Right.
patient doesn't feel like he or she is fully being heard, understood, treated, cared for, etc. Is there a model anywhere? Because I picked up on the word team that you
Yeah.
used, and it sounds like you've got to have some type of a team working together to treat the patient. Is there a model anywhere that's kind of breaking out of this mold and trying to do something differently?
I mean, I don't know of any country that I actually think is probably doing this that well. I think that there are groups of physicians who are trying to get together, whether they're, again, Western medical trained physicians or they're integrative practitioners. They're trying to have kind of one-stop shopping where a woman, for example, could go and have pelvic floor physical therapy, emotional therapy, acupuncture, as well as maybe seeing a nutritionist and a doctor. But I haven't heard of any really robust center that's done it. And it's a little surprising, right? Because it shouldn't be so challenging to do. We should easily
Mm-hmm.
be able to say that oncology department has the oncologist who really is in charge of your actual cancer. And then you have a therapist and a nutritionist and someone who's maybe a sex therapist. I think many hospitals have it in theory, but they don't do it very well. And so women are still left. I mean, I myself, as you know, I had ovarian cancer 8 years ago. And I loved my oncologist and my team, but I got, one session of nutritional support. I think they offered if I wanted to see a therapist, I could, but none of it was kind of presented in a way where this is the team and they are going to care for you. It was kind of like, well, we've collaborated with people in case you want it, it's there, but it was nothing robust. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's me as a
Yeah.
physician who knew how to advocate for myself. The average person can't do that. So I think you and I, as even though you're not in medicine, you and I could sit here right now and fashion a model that would work so well
Mm-hmm.
if the insurance companies were actually willing to do it.
Yeah.
I
That
know.
seems to be the fly in the ointment in the whole thing. And is there any solution down the road to this?
I mean,
I
I
mean,
think
it just seems like we're stuck.
I know I think what we're seeing a lot of, and I'm sure you're seeing it in Texas, is a lot of practitioners, a lot of physicians and other practitioners who are stopping insurance. And I don't blame them. My
Yes.
practice, we still take insurance. And I'm proud that we do, but I don't malign anyone who doesn't. And I understand it because if I stop taking insurance, I could see one patient an hour. I could really
Mm.
delve. I could feel very impactful. And frankly, I could have less stress. But it also means that my practice would be only able to take care of those patients who can afford it. And that means that
Mhm.
anyone who either is on Medicaid or just can't afford to pay out of pocket several hundreds of dollars wouldn't have access. And so that again creates even more inequity. So it doesn't really serve to value women who feel consistently disenfranchised. So I think until insurance companies realize that it might not be an immediate way for them to save money, but long-term health, they would absolutely save money if they did this. And I say this a lot. I don't care if they care about us emotionally. I care that they're smart enough to look at their bottom line. Their bottom line will be better served if we as a populace are physically and emotionally better served, right? Because
Mhm.
we would stay relevant longer. We would probably stay in the workforce longer. There's so many aspects of care that would actually indirectly behoove the insurance companies. And I think until they know that, we won't really get there, which is too bad.
Yeah. It is a shame. It is. And it is bottom line driven. And it will take some forward thinking people behind this to affect change at some point. And I think eventually it's going to become so cost prohibitive that that's what might do it. But my guest today is Dr. Shieva Ghofrany, an OB-GYN, and we are talking about healthcare versus sick care. We're talking about the industry as a whole and integrative medicine, ways to navigate through the system to best advocate for yourself. And Dr. Ghofrany, we're going to take a little break to thank the sponsors. But when we come back, I really would love it if you would share your journey with my audience. You've been through a lot physically, and it's probably impacted your viewpoint today and how you see healthcare or sick care. And I would love to dive into that when we come back. You guys know red light therapy is all the rage these days. There's a reason for it. And a leader in this space is BonCharge, a holistic wellness brand with a ton of evidence-based products to optimize your life in every way. But it's the red light face mask that's really getting a lot of press these days. What are you hearing about it? Well, first of all, it reduces wrinkles and fine lines. It can help with sore jaw, especially if you have TMJ, migraines, acne, scar tissue, wound healing. The list goes on and on. Only takes 10 to 20 minutes each day to use. You can wear it around the house while you're doing whatever it is you have to do, both near infrared and red light that boosts collagen and elastin production. And it feels great. I've seen a difference in my skin. Works in rapid time. It also has other amazing products like low blue light bulbs, blue light glasses, EMF protection, infrared sauna blankets. What an interesting company. And let me tell you, BonCharge products are all HSA, FSA eligible, giving you tax-free savings of up to 40%. Just go to boncharge.com/over50. Use coupon code over50 to save 15%. That's BONCHARGE.com/over50 and use coupon code over50 to save 15%. You all know I like to treat my body right, and the same holds true for my hair and my scalp. Let's face it, in midlife, our hair tends to thin, get finer, and we're all looking for solutions, and some of us would like to go chemical-free. Well, say no more to thinning hair with Vegamour. Vegamour will deliver visibly thicker, fuller, shinier, longer hair without all the harsh ingredients. Every bottle of Vegamour is 100% cruelty-free. They are never formulated with potentially harmful chemicals like parabens and hormones. And it's the Grow Essentials Kit that really, really helps me out. You can do a monthly subscription. You can get 3 products at once. Obviously, the more you order, the more you save. But the key in getting that growth that you're looking for is consistency. And that kind of applies to everything in life, right? Give your hair the power of the little pink bottle with Vegamour. For a limited time, Over 50 and Flourishing listeners get 20% off their first order by going to vegamour.com/over50 and use code over50 at checkout. That's vegamour.com/over50, code over50 to save 20% on your first order. vegamour.com/over50, code over50. Welcome back to Over 50 and Flourishing. My guest today is Dr. Shieva Ghofrany, an OB-GYN in the Connecticut area. We are talking about healthcare versus sick care. We're talking about integrative medicine. We're talking about how the system is broken, basically, and it's not fully serving women, especially patients who come to see an OB-GYN or especially people in midlife looking for that kind of a treatment. But Dr. Ghofrany, before the break, we were talking about your personal health journey, and you've been through quite a few scares along the way. So I'm curious if you would like to share what you've kind of gone through and what you've survived and how you're doing and how that's kind of shaped your viewpoint about the healthcare industry.
Dominique, it's actually, I mean, I laugh. I say it's funny, but I shouldn't say it's funny, but sometimes you have to laugh or you would cry, right?
Sure. Right.
As you touched upon, I've been through a lot of things. I've had multiple miscarriages. I had really challenging pregnancies, ovarian cancer, endometriosis, among many things. I want to touch upon each of those a little bit, but one of the biggest things I really found was what a lot of people complain about, and you probably hear about this too, with regard to weight and nutrition. So weight has always been a very big challenge for me. I did weight loss surgery before my third baby. I take Ozempic now. I'm very open and public about that because I feel like it really serves the people who know me to hear that doctors struggle too. And it's funny to me that we even say doctors struggle too, because you might know this. We do not learn nutrition in medical school at all. So one more aspect of this kind of integrative versus Western care is that we hear a lot of patients say, you know, that doctor just tried to put me on medication. Plus, the doctor doesn't have the time to be able to teach you. That doesn't mean it's not valuable, but this is where we need another model where the doctor should be able to say, let me refer you to this nutritionist that insurance will cover so that you can actually learn how to maybe take medication and fix your nutrition. But as it stands right now, they don't have the knowledge and they don't have the time. And so once again, the patient leaves the office feeling angry and disenfranchised and like the doctor hasn't listened. Couple that with a lot of attention on the fact that doctors get blamed for fat shaming. But then if they don't address someone's weight, they get blamed for merely wanting to write medications without actually kind of addressing weight. And it becomes a really delicate balance because once again, in 15 minutes, how can you all at once honor someone, feel respected and valued, that make them feel judged, right? It's a really tall order. And that requires knowledge, time, finesse, EQ, like a lot of things that just the burden being put, like I keep saying, on the medical system, not only is unfair to doctors, but just won't serve patients. So it's no longer valuable to just keep blaming the doctors. So I hope that makes sense the way I've kind of framed it, because it's not that I want to say it's not the doctor's fault. It's that it's just not going to serve us. Right.
Right. You know, and maybe I'm wrong here, but it seems that there's been a shift because people are so frustrated with the little minuscule amount of time that they're getting and they don't feel like they're fully being treated. So, you know, now it's Dr. Google and everybody's online and people are researching, good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, there is definite misinformation out there, but there's also some really good information out there. There are YouTube videos. There's content out there for people who are proactive. They realize that they're having issues with their weight, with their cholesterol, and they're searching natural remedies or what are my options. And people are alternatively, I think, working outside the traditional medical system to find those avenues. What do you think about that?
Yeah, actually, I love that you posed it that way, because I should also say that as much as I am going to always kind of defend the medical professionals to a degree, I will also tell you that I'm often the one going against the medical professionals and saying, while I support evidence-based medicine, there's not always evidence for certain things because we haven't yet looked for it and because we don't always have time to look for it. And so we, as Western medical trained physicians, need to appreciate and understand that if we don't have the time to teach our patients about nutrition, we can't then turn around and malign them and be angry when they go to Dr. Google or go to someone who might offer them a natural remedy. And I do think that happens a lot, where we all at once are like, we don't have the time, we're not trained. But at the same time, we kind of shame the public for seeking out external ways to learn things. And so I think both sides have to really do better at understanding each other and understanding where are the pitfalls and where can we align. And I think that hopefully we will, but I think it takes a little bit of kind of decreasing people's ego. There's ego on both sides, right?
Interesting.
And that's a hard thing. Yeah.
I mean, do you think doctors are doing the same thing? Because look, I mean, yes, you have evidence-based research that you are working off of, but you're a human too, right? I mean, you go through things, you've expressed, you know, that you've personally dealt with weight issues. I'm sure you search the internet and you look for alternative answers to things as well. Does that factor at all into your practice, or is it strictly research-based from the medical side?
No. And it's a great question. I mean, first of all, I laugh all the time. Like the fields that I don't know well, I'll call my colleagues and be like, I just Dr. Googled something and I saw something terrible and I shouldn't have. Also, and I will say, I'm very transparent with my own about the modalities that I will use that aren't always evidence-based and why I would use them and how I would use them. My meter for myself is if something is most likely harmless and I think I can afford it, I will potentially try it. But there's a big difference between me trying it for myself, me potentially talking even to my individual patients who know me well. I have a very good relationship with them and I can explain to them why this isn't evidence-based. I've tried it. I feel comfortable with you trying it if you want to, versus me talking about it on social media. I think that there are a lot of opportunities for doctors to capitalize on our voice, because while we're not completely trusted anymore, we are still somewhat trusted, right? And so I do think that some doctors end up kind of using external modalities that haven't been tried and true. It's one thing to try it themselves. It's another thing to sell it or capitalize on it in a financial way, or even in a
Mm-hmm.
way where we know that the populace will listen to us to a degree. I think that there has to be a little bit of an ethical fine line. And I don't know what the line is. I mean, it's not a distinct line, but I think we kind of,
Sure.
we know it when we see it, even if we can't define it, right?
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. It seems just the more doctors that I speak with, I am finding more and more who are aligned with your way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, traditional. Yes, when needed, we have our scientific evidence-based routes that we know work, but we also have more of a integrative approach, natural approach to some things. So there seems to be this melding and this blending that's taking place. Are you seeing that in your community? I know
Yeah.
you mentioned to me that you had come to Dallas for the past couple of years for a
Yeah.
conference that's now going to be held in Austin. I'm so curious as to what those conversations are like with other practitioners out there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think I say this again, very openly and publicly. When I had ovarian cancer, I willingly took my toxic chemotherapy to kill the cancer cells, while also every single time I had chemotherapy using acupuncture, which had not been
Mhm.
actively studied 8 years ago with regard to the things that I needed it for, but I did it. And if nothing else, it helped me relax and it helped me connect with my body in different ways. I also
Mhm.
radically changed my nutrition, even though there isn't exactly so much data, right? There is some data, but depending on what evidence-based studies you look at, maybe eating sugar isn't actually going to be toxic for cancer cells, but I felt like it's probably not good for me in other ways.
Mhm.
So let me try to eat differently.
Yep.
So yes, I think that many of us as doctors are doing it. And to your point, this conference, it's called Pinnacle. It's a large female physician conference. We have people from all different parts of the medical community, some of whom are doing very pure, again, Western medical practices, and some are doing really integrative modalities as well, and some mix. And I think that that would be beautiful to be able to do that in our regular
Mm.
practices who take insurance. I think, like I keep saying, the hard part is just the time. How do you all at once go through in your well woman visit your mammogram, your pap smear? Do you need a pap smear or not? Are you feeling okay? How is your family? Let's talk about family history. And also, how's your nutrition? How's your sex life?
Mhm.
The number of things we are supposed to review, and all that within a framework of, you also want to connect with your patient emotionally if you actually
Yeah.
enjoy the field of medicine. So yeah,
That's a toughie.
it is.
Will you explain? I mean, explain this 15-minute thing because
Yeah,
I've heard this from every doctor that I
yeah,
have spoken with. They all say 15 minutes.
yeah.
Who set this 15-minute
Yes.
model?
Again, I love that you asked that question, because when patients say to me, I know the insurance company requires it, I'm very careful to explain, oh no, the insurance company doesn't care. I could see two patients. But guess what? The insurance company does not reimburse us on time. They reimburse us on what we just did. And
Mm.
unfortunately, for a well woman visit, actually, I'll give you a bigger example that I think is fascinating. When we
Mm.
take care of a pregnant person for their entire pregnancy, right? So the woman gets pregnant, she comes to see us her entire pregnancy, as you probably remember, 15 to 25
Yep.
visits, depending on your risk level or any issues that happened, then the delivery, and then the 6-week postpartum visit. That entire, what amounts to about 11 months of care. Do you know how much most OBGYNs in the country get reimbursed if they take insurance?
Mm.
Like, guess. I mean, 11 months of care, including the delivery, including the number of hours you might have been in labor or needed a C-section or had an emergency. What would you think, given everything else you pay for in medicine, what would you think they would get reimbursed?
Well, I would think it would be a substantial number, but based on how you're couching it, it's got to be horrific. So,
Horrific.
what? A couple thousand?
A
What
couple
is it?
thousand. Well, and let me just contrast. When you go in for like back surgery, neck surgery, orthopedic, neurosurgery, the reimbursements, and
Right.
by the way, those doctors deserve it as well. Very high, right? Like, you go in for a back surgery, it might be $10,000 to $20,000. We get from Medicaid in the state of Connecticut, Medicaid reimburses us $2,750, so $2,750 for 11 months of care.
Oh
It
my
is
gosh.
less than what the lab would get for one prenatal panel. If it's a private insurance company, we'll get anywhere from 3, maybe 6,000, but that's rare. It's usually like 3 to 5,000 from private insurers. Again, in Connecticut, some of the groups
Hmm.
get more if they're part of bigger groups. Sometimes in New York City, for example, they get more. Many doctors charge out of pocket, and they'll charge $20,000, and then the patient gets reimbursed. And again, I do not blame them. They deserve it. In contrast, our malpractice is anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000 per year per doctor. So when you look
Hmm.
at it that way, it's not that the insurance company is saying you only can see patients for 15 minutes. It's they're saying
Yeah.
you can do whatever you want. But if you actually want to not only
But
be
no,
able
you
to,
can't.
right, you can, because you have to pay your
Okay.
electricity, you pay your employees. You'd actually like to make a living yourself, because many of us also finished medical school with debt. And then we went through
Right.
residency where we made $30,000 to $60,000 a year working 80 to 120 hours a week. So again, I think that the truth is this: I actually really have faith that when people and the community hear these stories, they're like, oh gosh, I didn't realize that. I didn't think about that.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. I don't think the doctors are doing this nefariously to, like, be really greedy. But I think that as doctors, we actually don't do a great job at advocating for ourselves. And there's still this idea that, like, talking about money somehow as a doctor is like,
Mm-hmm. It's
isn't
taboo. You
it's
can't.
taboo. It's not respectful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we as doctors have to break out of that. And I think we need to educate it's not
Mm-hmm.
your fault as a populace that you don't know what we get reimbursed. It's not your fault. Right. And so,
Right.
and what you do see is the lab tests. You see the hospital bills. Those bills are crazy.
Right.
Or you see these
Crazy.
confusing explanation of benefits from what is charged,
Yeah.
but that's not what is reimbursed. And so you
Right.
can't understand it. And so again, all this to say, I think that if we talked more, if we collaborated more, not only doctor
Mm-hmm.
to patient, but kind of doctors in general to the populace to understand the practice of medicine, I think we would do better. And unfortunately, I actually see no way out of this unless insurers do a better job at actually valuing
Yeah.
patients, which they don't.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, the conversation just it leads your head in circles. I mean, honestly, it's like chasing a tail. You can't even understand it. And to your point, when you look at an explanation of benefits, you always see what the hospital is billing, and it's this crazy number. And then you see the network negotiated charge, which is this tiny little number.
Yeah.
So who's setting all of these prices that are just absolutely through the roof and unattainable?
Yeah, the insurance companies. And you cannot, we are in a private independent practice, which is anathema. It's very unusual nowadays. We have no bargaining power with insurance companies. If my practice, which is 5 doctors, if we wanted to get better rates for reimbursement, we would have to hire a company to go and try to fight and contract with the insurance companies to try to get better reimbursements for us. Which again, we'd have to pay these people to do it.
Costs more money.
Cost more money, and we're not even guaranteed that we're going to get it. And so they set the fees. They literally set the price. It becomes a little bit of a game. I could charge them $30,000 for delivery. They pay me $2,750 to $5,000. So it's immaterial what I charge. And I keep saying, I think that I'm the daughter of physicians, so I saw how medicine used to be, which, by the way, even when doctors used to make more money, the practice of medicine was different, but it set us up, unfortunately, for the system we have now, which is not great. I think that, listen, in menopause care, which you and I both love to hear and talk about, this, that doctors OBGYNs don't even get trained in menopause care.
No.
And it's because the amount of surgical skill we need when we finish the 4 years is pretty high. So there's so many other aspects that we need to learn in 4 years. What we really need is a separate model where those doctors who are interested actually train in menopause care, because women deserve it. And forget that women deserve it from an ethical perspective, which we do. The populace would do better, insured, if the menopausal women were treated better and valued, because then their health would be better. So there's so many reasons why this could work if they would think about it in a long term.
Yes. And to your point, Dr. Gofrany, it's why a lot of practitioners like yourself, people I know of who were, OB-GYNs practicing for 20 and 30 years, broke camp because they felt they were doing a disservice to their menopausal community and just, to your point, could not give the time and went into these private practices, but also, they're not covered by insurance. And so it's for a select group of people who can afford it. It's not to say that women can't get help. I mean, there are doctors like yourself who understand, value, and recognize a woman in midlife and where she is. And I bet you're asking all the right questions. So let's talk about, we're going to take a quick break and, knowing this conundrum, right? And knowing not everybody can afford this kind of private concierge care. How can we best advocate for ourselves in a traditional model as long as this model is in existence? We hope and pray that there's going to be some forward thinking, some change in this area. But I really, really want to help women do the best that they can with what we have at the moment. So we're going to take a quick break, and I want you to tackle that when we come back.
Perfect.
Love having Jenny Kane as one of the sponsors in today's episode. One of my favorite classic contemporary clothing lines. Beautiful, timeless. I feel that my wardrobe is complete. It's a California brand through and through, a wonderful summer aesthetic. They're known for their gorgeous winter sweaters. I mean, pure cashmere and quality fabrics, but they also have cotton sweaters as well. Beautiful blouses. Their dresses are to die for. Again, the cotton cocoon cardigan is probably my favorite right now during the summer months, and I love it. You can mix and match a lot of neutrals. So easy to wear and pair with what you already have. The Cooper cardigan is another one that I would look into. A beautiful, flattering silhouette. Again, you can layer for evenings as well. The dresses, can I tell you about the dresses? Flowy, easygoing, breezy. And then they've got a stunning collection of home essentials as well. Furniture pieces, pillows, throws, decor, candles, you name it. Find your new uniform at jennykane.com. Our listeners get 15% off your first order when you use code Dominique15 at checkout. That's 15% off your first order. JENNIKAYNE.com, promo code Dominique15. Let getting dressed be one less thing to worry about. Embrace your summer aesthetic with Jenny Kane. You've heard me talk a lot about intermittent fasting, the benefits like weight loss, mental and physical performance, gut health, but a lot of you worry about the whole fasting part and feel like you might struggle with that. Well, that's exactly why Prolon was created. It is a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes the body while making cells believe they are fasting. Prolon is not a diet. It is science. It is based on Nobel Prize-winning discoveries in medicine. And it all starts with Prolon's 5-day program. Listen to this. Snacks, soups, and beverages, all designed to keep your body in a fasting state. It's unlike anything you've ever experienced. And with my new crazy work schedule, Prolon is on my list. It is convenient and again backed by Nobel-winning science, and it works. Right now, Prolon is offering Over 50 and Flourishing with Dominique Sachse listeners 10% off their 5-day nutrition program. Go to prolonlife.com/over50. Again, /over50. That's PROLON life.com/over50. Over 50 for this special offer. That's prolonlife.com/over50. Again, over 50. Welcome back. Boy, what an interesting conversation about the state of our healthcare or sick care or my goodness, whatever you want to call it. It's a mess. It is a mess, and it requires all of us to truly be our own best advocates because we know the system isn't working properly. And Dr. Shieva Ghofrany has really broken down why that is. It's not that your doctor doesn't want to help you. It's not that they don't want to spend the time. It's just that they can't because it is cost prohibitive to spend more time and to be able to basically, like you said, pay for the roof over the head, pay for the staff, pay for malpractice insurance, pay for all the things that really rack up when it comes to running a doctor's office and a medical practice. It's expensive, and you were very transparent about those numbers. And I think you really help a lot of us understand the situation you're in while you're trying to understand the situation we're in. Right. So it is a bit of a predicament. So how can we best advocate for our own healthcare in light of this system and situation?
Well, and so assuming that most of us still want to use the insurance model because we're paying for it, so we would like to try to use doctors who accept insurance, I think we have to be really mature, first of all, and knowledgeable. What I mean by that is, let's go with knowledgeable first. When you go to your annual gynecology visit, that is meant to be what we call a screening or preventative visit. Not dictated by us, by the way. That's dictated by the insurance company. And that means that we have to make sure we're going through a set of screening questions and screening evaluations with the understanding that you've come to us actually without any issues. That's what screening means by definition in medicine. You came to me, you didn't have any problems with your breast or your cervix or anything that you know of. I'm going to make sure that all those things are okay by doing a breast exam, maybe offering a mammogram, maybe a pap smear if you need it, and asking other questions about your family history and your history. That's what an annual screening preventative exam is. The minute you then say, oh, but by the way, I'm having hot flashes or night sweats or bleeding or any issue, theoretically, your doctor can and actually should have that be a separate diagnostic visit. Not because, again, your doctor wants to be a jerk, but she doesn't have the time in 15 minutes to cover all the screening stuff and the diagnostic stuff. So it requires you to know that, because innocently you wouldn't know that. You'd think, oh, I'm seeing my doctor next month. I'm going to wait and talk to her next month. That would make
I can do it
perfect sense,
all.
right? And the truth is, if insurance allowed for it, then in 20 cover a lot of that stuff with you. I could charge for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you and I could have a follow-up phone call. But insurance doesn't really allow for that. You try to add on a code and the insurance says, no, this is just an annual exam. So as the doctor, you either have to cut the visit short, or you have to piss the patient off and try to charge them separately, which doesn't go over well, right? So
Right.
knowledge is important, that you know that. And then the maturity. The maturity comes in with, okay, go in saying to your doctor, I have questions. I recognize this is my screening test. So I'm going to make a separate appointment to come back in 1, 2, 3 weeks. Now, is that challenging? Of course it is, because forget that you and I are of privilege in that we have careers and things like that, where we're not, we don't not have any money. We don't have lack of insurance, but we don't have the time, because you and I work a lot. I don't have time to be going back to my doctors 3 times. But I'm telling us as women that if we want good care, and if we want to continue to value doctors and not just keep blaming them, because that's not ultimately going to help us, then what we need is multiple different visits, unless we want to pay for someone who doesn't take insurance, right? If you pay for someone with insurance, you'll get an hour of their time. If they're taking insurance, you're going to get 15 to 20 minutes, and you might need 2 or 3 visits to really be able to focus on all of the different issues. So that's the best way I can tell you to actually advocate for yourself, because otherwise there's just no way for you to get all of that good information. Or what will happen is doctors will continue to burn out and they'll leave medicine.
Yeah, which is happening, and it is, unfortunate, and it's sad, because it was considered and it still is such a prestigious profession, something to aspire to. I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer. I mean, it was, the thing, because you are helping people and you are changing and affecting lives, and so it's a noble profession by nature, and I would really hate to see it lose that nobility, in making a difference. I really love your suggestion about making the 2 appointments. And I think maybe, is it advisable to do, like, when you call and say, okay, I'm going to do my well woman visit, but at the same time, I'd like to schedule something maybe a week later, because what happens is you schedule your well woman, that it may have taken 4, 5, 6 weeks to get that appointment. Then when you show up for that one, it may be another 4, 5, or 6 weeks before you get your next. So do you advise scheduling both appointments at once?
Yes. And here's where, again, I will bear the brunt of blame on the medical side. Not all doctors' offices are really well equipped to have the staff understand this, right? Because the staff doesn't always understand the billing practices. So the staff might be like, oh no, just talk to the doctor when you come in, without recognizing that. Or the staff might only open the schedule, for example, 4 months ahead of time. Like in my case, when I was in the office seeing all the gynecology patients, my staff, I had them open the schedule a year ahead of time. So if you came in for your annual, I would say, okay, Dominique, you're leaving from your annual, make your appointment now. Because what will happen is you'll forget to make your appointment until 2 months before it's due. And then you'll try to scramble and my schedule would already be busy. So I think we as patients have to think ahead and schedule a year ahead if we can. And as doctors' offices, we need to open up the schedule, and we need to maybe say to the patients, we need to use our words. We need to say, you're coming in for your annual. Do you have any problems? Because if you do, maybe now's the time to make a separate appointment. But again, that requires training. And it's really hard for the doctors to train our staff because we're so busy seeing the patients back to back, right? So it becomes a very circuitous thing, which is why I'm asking for the population and patients' help in this, in coming to their doctors and saying, hey, listen, I thought about it, and can I make 2 appointments? So that would be a great thing for people to do if their doctor's office will let them. And I'm saying to the doctors out there, we need to be better about doing that as well.
Right. Try to help. We're all trying to help me help you.
Yeah, exactly.
from the movie. Knowing that we only have this short window of time with our doctor, I would assume that it would be great to sit there and take the time to actually write down everything that's going on, so you can show up, because I think you get so caught up. A 15-minute conversation is lightning quick. And if you don't have everything written down that you're experiencing, you're likely to forget something and have maybe a major symptom overlooked.
Yes. So I love that you say write it down. What I would actually really do is I would tell people before they go in, write down their medical problems. Like, do they have high blood pressure, diabetes, asthma? Write down their surgeries so that they remember off the top of their head what surgeries they've had. Write down, and this requires to ask, find out your family history. I can't tell you how many times, and my patients know I'm going to ask them because they know that I care about family history because of my own cancer. What's in your family? I don't know. Did your mom or dad? So I always say mom, dad, aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins, siblings, or children. Did they have breast, colon, ovarian, uterine, melanoma, pancreatic, prostate, or kidney cancers? Find out that information before going to the doctor, because then even if your doctor forgets, you can say, by the way, 3 people in my family had cancer and I need to tell you about it so that I understand what my risk is, for example. Make sure you know what medications you're on. Make sure if you have your period, you know when your period was. So there's a lot of things that you can do that these are just basic good things that people should know about their own health anyway, but there was for you to learn that you needed to know those things. So shameless plug, I'll also say, if you follow me on social media, or many of us as physicians, especially in the OBGYN community, we're really trying to teach patients what to do so that they can go to their doctors and have a more impactful visit, because we've hopefully preemptively educated them ahead of time so that they don't need to use that precious 15 minutes being educated, for example, about menopause. They can learn about it through our forums, for example, that are free on Instagram, for example.
Love it. What's your viewpoint on prescriptions? And I know it's not one size fits all. There can be a tendency of over prescribing. I know doctors can get kickbacks on medications that are prescribed, and then there's this sort of downhill effect of you're on this medicine and it has side effects, and then you get on this medicine and that medicine. What's your approach? Is it only if needed? Do you try to get people off medications? How do you feel about that?
Right. And again, I always joke, my answer is almost always, it depends. First of all, I have to be honest.
Right.
I don't know any doctors who get direct kickbacks from medications. I just don't even know how it would happen. There's no way for a drug company to pay us directly. Meaning, for example, I do an ad for an over-the-counter vaginal hyaluronic acid, but I don't get paid per person who buys it. I just do an ad because it's a product that my patients told me about years ago before Instagram even existed, right? So, and are there doctors who, for example, in the past would sell narcotics? Yes, but that was illegal and on the black market. So in other words, I could write 10,000 birth control pills. I am not getting paid a dime for it. In fact, it is not going to behoove me to prescribe birth control pills because then my patients aren't getting pregnant. I would rather them get pregnant and come see me, right? So right. I do think that we really need to figure out how the population can understand that doctors don't get paid for these things. That is not how we get paid. I think that the approach as to whether or not people should or shouldn't be on medications for any entity, let's say it's weight, let's say it's depression or anxiety, I think the answer is it depends, right? I will all at once tell my patients, for example, if you are really having mood changes or anxiety and you need it, I will absolutely give you an SSRI. At the same time, will I also talk to you about trying to help yourself through different therapeutic modalities? Yes. The same thing with weight loss medications. I use weight loss medication myself, but I'm also really watching what I'm eating very carefully, trying to fix my mindset about it without shame, making sure I'm exercising more. So again, I don't think that any doctor should always prescribe or never prescribe, because then we're losing the art of medicine. And this is where, medicine really still should be an art. But in order to have that art, we need
I love how
time.
you phrase that.
Yeah.
Well, yes, that's a great way to phrase it. And that kind of circles us right back to your integrative approach, and, hopefully an approach that many other practitioners are embracing, is understanding that, yes, medicine is an art form if prescribed and done well in conjunction with living well at the same time, and just understanding what both of those look like.
Right. And so it should be a really complementary approach where patients and doctors, that's where, getting back to the sick care versus healthcare. Imagine if you came to me for your sick care because you're sick and you need me. And then there was a parallel model where Dominique could go see someone for her healthcare, meaning someone who's going to teach her how to actually prevent, screen, and really be able to not need the sick care model as much. Then the doctors could actually be left only seeing the sick people, which would mean maybe we could see fewer patients and spend more time with them. But as it stands right now, the whole burden is on us to do healthcare and sick care. And we're not trained and we're not equipped time-wise. So,
And so people in that healthcare model, they're not covered by insurance whatsoever, are they?
Most are not. Some are. I will say there are some integrative doctors who really try to continue to take insurance, but the truth is many of them over time end up stopping, and I don't blame them, because it's even harder to teach someone nutrition or really get into their mindset in 15 minutes, right? Like that's an impossible model. It's much easier to write a prescription, which getting back to it is why many doctors just write the prescription. There's also data. Do you know this? That there's a lot of data, and this is where it's very conflicting. If they've done studies where if a patient leaves the emergency room and they have not left with a prescription for a narcotic or an antibiotic, they will potentially rate their experience and that doctor lower, right? And for many of the doctors, for example, in emergency rooms who are employed by these larger groups, their bonus structure is tied to their ratings. So now they're trying to do the right thing. They don't want to prescribe antibiotics if it's not necessary. They don't want to prescribe narcotics if it's not necessary, but the patient will rate them lower and then their reimbursement is attached to it. But then they're blamed if they actually prescribe the narcotic or the antibiotic without it being necessary. So again, there's so many cycles.
It's a mess.
Right. It's a mess.
Yes.
And patients don't know that. So it's not their fault. It's not your fault as the patient know these things. It's our burden, unfortunately, as doctors to tell you that this is what's happening.
Well, and it's up to us too to be situationally aware that having narcotics and having too many antibiotics aren't good for us. And so what we're demanding from our doctors and the reason why we're rating them poorly is because we think that we know better and that the things that we're wanting are what we need. And in fact, they're damaging to our bodies if overused.
If overused, they need to be judiciously used. And that's where a good collaborative relationship, which often requires time for trust to build. Because then I can say to my patient, listen, I don't think you need the antibiotic right now. Let's try ABC. But if by this point in time, tomorrow, the next day, it's not improving, then call me and then we can use the antibiotics. But that requires, again, trust and the ability to connect with your patient and the ability to have follow-up. And a lot of that is lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Boy, what a fascinating conversation we've had today. I mean, it's so clear the system is broken and it's a shame. But, if there is anybody to lead the way to this integrative approach, Dr. Shieva Ghofrany, I nominate you. Yay. You have such a good grasp on the whole thing. And you clearly want to enable traditional medicine to still have a place, but also embracing and understanding the role and the importance of the integrative part as well, which is the other side, the natural, the wellness and everything. And just, maybe one day there will be a model that will serve us better and, and we can all live happily ever after.
I hope. Well, let's talk about it more. I love that you're interested.
I know. I would love to.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
I'm very, very interested. And kudos to doctors who are, sticking it out and trying their best to approach it this way and trying their best to educate their patients and, within a framework that makes it very difficult and complicated and kind of ties their hands. So grateful for people like you and just grateful for conversations like these. Thank you so, so much for being with me today.
Thank you for giving us the voice and the platform. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation today with Dr. Shieva Ghofrany. I want to make sure you can find her. So we've put links to her website and her Instagram page below. And that way you can check her out, learn more. She's a wonderful woman to follow. She's so insightful and really a pioneer in her field and just so grateful to have her on Over 50 and Flourishing. If you're watching on YouTube, please, if you do me a favor, subscribe to the channel. I would love to have you get regular notifications every week when I release the podcast Over 50 and Flourishing on YouTube on Monday, and then my usual videos on Thursday. And if you comment in the comment section below, let me know what you thought about today's episode, what you would like to see in future episodes. We pay attention to those and we'd love to see what you have to say about it. And if you listen, wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Apple or Spotify, you name it, please rate, review, subscribe, and share Over 50 and Flourishing with those you know and love. Help to grow this platform. Help make it a wonderful space for women over 50 who want to live their best life today. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next week. You've heard me talk a lot about intermittent fasting, the benefits like weight loss, mental and physical performance, gut health, but a lot of you worry about the whole fasting part and feel like you might struggle with that. Well, that's exactly why Prolon was created. It is a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes the body while making cells believe they are fasting. Prolon is not a diet. It is science. It is based on Nobel Prize-winning discoveries in medicine. And it all starts with Prolon's 5-day program. Listen to this: snacks, soups, and beverages, all designed to keep your body in a fasting state. It's unlike anything you've ever experienced. And with my new crazy work schedule, Prolon is on my list. It is convenient and again backed by Nobel-winning science, and it works. Right now, Prolon is offering Over 50 and Flourishing with Dominique Sachse listeners 10% off their 5-day nutrition program. Go to prolonlife.com/over50. Again, /over50. That's PROLON life.com/over50. Over 50 for this special offer. That's prolonlife.com/over50. Again, over 50.